Hi everyone, it's your boy Zach, and this is my review of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, The Revenge of Cobra. It's the second G.I. Joe animated miniseries. This one's from '84. I just reviewed the previous one yesterday, and that one was excellent, excellent. And this one was excruciating. I actually finished it just to get it over with. So I mentioned a million times in my other channel how influential G.I. Joe was on like my life. I joined the military, I was in the infantry for 12 years. And whenever I would remember, people would mention the G.I. Joe animated shows from the 80s. I would always remember the two miniseries very fondly. The series I didn't like so much. I remember the series being very jokey and kind of like having an even lower, if the other shows were made for like, I don't know, 8 to 12 year olds, the series seemed like it was for like 6 to 8 year olds. And then by the time the movie came out in '87, I was like 14. So I was like, quote, too old. So I don't really know. I think I saw the G.I. Joe animated movie once. But then actually later, like 15 years ago, they started coming out with new ones. A couple of animated ones and a couple of 2D ones. And those were actually good. I might check those out. But I got to say, so I remember at the time, because, there would be all these news articles, on the news, there'd be like, kids are being brainwashed by cartoons. I'm like, hey, whatever. I'm a kid. I like cartoons. Oh my gosh. It is even more stark when you watch the first miniseries from '83 versus the second miniseries from '84. This thing is a toy commercial. It's nothing but a toy commercial. And you might say, well, so? And that's what I used to say when I was a kid. I was like, yeah, so what? Who cares? I like it. G.I. Joe, cool. There's no story here. There's no imagination. Basically, they took the plot of the first miniseries, they repeated it while screwing it up. Like this has the first one they were going for the 3 catalytic elements that powered the mass device, and that was cool. This one, there's a weather dominator, which is basically just the mass device, but for weather. But instead of like it having fuels, at one point in like the end of the second episode, this is I don't know. This annoys the hell out of me. The weather dominator worked. They stole a piece from G.I. Joe to make it work. Then they used it. Then it was blown up. And then part of the weather dominator, essentially just the cannon part of it, went up into space, exploded, except for it didn't explode. It just switched into 3 components, and then it fell down amazingly in 3 different parts of land and not just 2 parts of the ocean and 1 part of land. I can't emphasize how much this annoys me. The weather dominator was an entire apparatus. It was an entire cannon assembly. Essentially just the barrel was blown off. And then we got to spend 3 episodes trying to find different parts of the barrel, which absolutely should have been destroyed. And in fact, at one point, the G.I. Joes have 1 component, the Cobras have another, and then Zartan steals a third to auction off to the one of the teams, except for the teams would just have 2 pieces. And then he basically says, well, you can go steal it from the other guys, or you can just build your own missing component, which I'm like, what? Why didn't... Oh my gosh. So, whatever. It's made for kids. Kids will probably not notice that. That's fine. Here's the problem. Every single scene is essentially just they fight. I talked about in the other one where there's so many amazing, adventures and everything that a kid likes. You got, lava, you got quicksand. In this, you'll just have a chase scene, which will just be vehicles going down a road. And the 2 teams are shooting lasers, and there's no real effect to the weapons at all. There was barely any imagination in this whole thing. And then you really starting to notice that anytime they have a scene, it's not about drama or imagination or heroism or loyalty. It's just, here's the whale. It's the G.I. Joe hovercraft. It has missiles. It has depth charges. It has cannons. And it has a little sled. So, right, going down a list, they will demonstrate how the missiles work, how the depth charges work, how the cannons work, or the turrets work, and then how the sled comes out, and then they'll utilize the sled. But like, there's no imagination. The only parts that were actually cool and interesting were things not based off of advertising any of the new figures or the playsets or the vehicles. But at one point, the G.I. Joes are trying to figure out how to stop this weather dominator, and then they create these like crystal shields, and they don't work to stop hail, and that was actually a pretty cool scene, but they do absorb electricity, so you get to see them kind of use some ingenuity, not always win. And the crystal shields themselves looked pretty cool. They weren't a perfect weapon, they weren't magic, but that part I actually liked a lot. There's another scene where they have these sleds that are not toys, and they're kind of luging through these ice, and that was kind of fun. But like, besides that, it's just like grim commercialism. And I'm a capitalist, but like, put some imagination into it. This was awful. I think this is why I literally switched out a better story from the comics. I would have literally bet a month's pay that the second miniseries was about creating Serpentor, because that's how I remembered it. And then when I looked it up, I think I mentioned it in the other video. Like, I looked it up, I go, apparently the second one is a weather dominator. They go, oh yeah, it's the exact same plot as the first miniseries. And the other thing that drove me nuts is that the animation in the first miniseries, it's pretty rough, in a lot of places. And in fact, in a lot of places, it looks like they were just zooming in on a corner of the cell. So like, you see the lines of that, and the faces, and they're very kind of like they look like they were drawn very small. So in this one, like, the first 10 minutes of the first episode is really high level animation. And then by the time you get to the later ones, it's sloppier than the first miniseries. Like, they're not drawing the characters on model, just a lot of just lazy mistakes. And just the thing that just bothered me was the complete lack of imagination. And it's the same guy who wrote both miniseries, apparently. And then when I finished this one, it auto-played into the first episode of the series, and then I see the same guy's name. So I don't know what's up with that, but I'm guessing it was, the first one. One of the things that was cool about the first one is there weren't that many characters. There were like 8 Joes, about 4 Cobra characters, and just a few vehicles. Like, you had a lot of room to vamp, and you could just do, oh, here are the worms of death, and here's the slaves in Cobra Castle, and one of them's a giant for no reason. And oh, here's a mysterious blind trapper in the woods. Like, just cool, fun, exciting stuff. And no, all this was what was it? 22 times. It's like 110-minute commercial. That's all it was. And it really like bummed me out. I was like, all those hippie moms were right. This is irredeemable trash. So like I said, by the time the series came out, I was kind of, quote, too old for it. So I would only really watch it when I was babysitting. And I remember a couple episodes being okay-ish. But nothing really that special at all. So I don't know. I'll probably give like one episode of the series. I guess the first 5 issues were also a, like one arc called the Pyramid of Death. So I'll give the first episode a try. But if it's not good, I'll probably just quit. Although I think I will rewatch those 3D animated G.I. Joe movies from a couple years ago. Like 10, 15 years ago. And then there was a really good one written by Warren Ellis. That one was freaking fantastic. So I gotta go find a way to watch that one. So anyway, not a recommend. Definitely not. I mean, it's free on YouTube. Honestly, if you just want to see some pretty good quality 80s animation, watch the first 10 minutes of the first episode of this miniseries. Besides that, you can just skip all of it. I mean, it was and the other thing that I liked is and this was the one the funny thing is, all my memories of the first 2 miniseries were almost entirely the first miniseries, but they introduced Shipwreck, and he has this boat that sails on the on ocean or desert dunes, and I thought that was really cool and it's really fun here. Like I said, all the imaginations was when they invented things that weren't toys. The toys are just like, this is the G.I. Joe blah and it does blah and then you could blah, like basically telling dumb kids how to play with their toys. Oh, video title. Um, so anyway, thanks for watching, and I don't think I'm going to do the G.I. Joe one. I've been talking about Aliens. Yeah, I'm going to try to watch Aliens tomorrow. Finish that. Thanks for watching. Bye.